Question 1. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for streamlining the Albany Medical College admissions process, suggesting changes to application review timelines and interview scheduling protocols. However, concerns have been raised about the study's methodology and potential biases. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and ethical admissions practices? Option A. Conduct an independent audit of the efficiency study's data and methodology to validate its findings before proposing any changes to the admissions process. Option B. Disregard the efficiency study entirely due to concerns about its methodology and maintain the current admissions process without modification. Option C. Selectively implement the aspects of the efficiency study that appear most straightforward to change, focusing on quick wins for perceived efficiency. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed changes to the application, review timelines, and interview scheduling protocols to capitalize on the identified efficiencies. Correct answer is A. Conduct an independent audit of the efficiency study's data and methodology to validate its findings before proposing any changes to the admissions process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of institutional improvement with the ethical obligation to ensure that any proposed changes are based on accurate and unbiased data, and that the process of implementing these changes respects the rights and well-being of all stakeholders, particularly students. The Albany Medical College entrance exam, like all accredited medical school admissions processes, operates under strict guidelines set by accrediting bodies and relevant state and federal regulations concerning fairness, non-discrimination, and data integrity. The core ethical and regulatory imperative is to maintain the integrity and fairness of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough, independent validation of the efficiency study's findings before any significant changes are implemented. This ensures that decisions are data-driven and that the proposed efficiencies do not inadvertently create barriers to entry for qualified candidates or introduce bias. Regulatory frameworks governing medical education admissions emphasize transparency, fairness, and evidence-based decision-making. Specifically, accrediting bodies like the Liaison Committee on Medical Education, LCME, require that admissions processes are equitable and free from bias, and that institutional policies are based on sound data and rationale. An independent review aligns with these principles by providing an objective assessment, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring compliance with accreditation standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement changes based solely on the initial efficiency study without further verification. This fails to uphold the principle of evidence-based decision-making and risks violating regulatory requirements for fair and equitable admissions. Such an action could lead to unintended consequences, such as disadvantaging certain applicant groups or undermining the perceived fairness of the admissions process, potentially drawing scrutiny from accrediting bodies. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the study entirely without a proper review. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to continuous improvement and may overlook genuine opportunities for enhancement. It also fails to engage with data in a constructive manner, which is a hallmark of responsible institutional management and adherence to best practices in higher education administration. A third incorrect approach would be to selectively implement parts of the study that appear beneficial without a comprehensive understanding of their potential impact. This piecemeal adoption risks creating inconsistencies within the admissions process and may not achieve the intended efficiencies, while also failing to address potential negative consequences that a holistic review would uncover. This approach lacks the rigor required for significant policy changes in an educational setting governed by strict standards. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic approach. First, critically evaluate the source and methodology of any proposed changes. Second, seek independent verification or validation of the data and findings. Third, consider the potential impact on all stakeholders, particularly students, ensuring fairness and equity. And finally, consult relevant institutional policies and external regulatory guidelines before making any implementation decisions. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that streamlining the application review process by implementing an automated initial screening system could significantly reduce administrative costs and processing times for the Albany Medical College entrance exam. However, Concerns have been raised that the proposed algorithm might inadvertently disadvantage applicants from underrepresented backgrounds due to historical data biases. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical admissions practices for Albany Medical College? Option A. Implement the automated system immediately to capture efficiency benefits and address any applicant complaints regarding bias on a case-by-case basis after the admissions cycle concludes. Option B. Halt the implementation of the automated system and revert to the previous manual review process to avoid any potential risks, even if it means foregoing efficiency gains. Option C. Proceed with the automated screening system after a brief internal review, assuming that any potential biases are minor and will be corrected in subsequent human review stages. Option D. Engage legal counsel and consult with the Office for Civil Rights, OCR, to conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of the proposed automated system, ensuring it complies with federal anti-discrimination laws and ethical admission standards before implementation. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the automated screening system after a brief internal review, assuming that any potential biases are minor and will be corrected in subsequent human review stages. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the institution's operational goals with the ethical imperative to ensure equitable access to education and to uphold the integrity of the admissions process. The Albany Medical College entrance exam, like all accredited medical school admissions, operates under strict federal and state regulations designed to prevent discrimination and ensure fairness. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying these regulations to a situation where efficiency gains might inadvertently create barriers for certain applicant groups. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed changes against established federal regulations, specifically Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin in programs receiving federal financial assistance. Additionally, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, governs the privacy of student education records, which could be implicated if applicant data is handled improperly during efficiency improvements. The approach of seeking legal counsel and consulting with the Office for Civil Rights, OCR, ensures that any changes are compliant with these overarching federal mandates and that the college avoids discriminatory practices or privacy violations. This proactive engagement with regulatory bodies and legal experts is crucial for maintaining institutional integrity and upholding the principles of equal opportunity in admissions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering potential disparate impacts on protected classes would violate Title VI. For instance, implementing a new, expensive application portal that disproportionately burdens applicants from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or those with limited technological access could be deemed discriminatory. Another incorrect approach that involves sharing applicant data with third-party vendors without explicit consent or a clear data sharing agreement would violate FERPA. This could lead to privacy breaches and erode applicant trust. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of processing over thoroughness and fairness, potentially leading to overlooking qualified candidates or introducing biases, would undermine the fundamental principles of a fair admissions process and could invite regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the core objective, efficiency, and then systematically evaluating potential impacts against relevant legal and ethical frameworks. This involves a multi-stakeholder consultation process, including legal counsel, admissions officers, and potentially diversity and inclusion committees. A risk assessment should be conducted to identify potential areas of non-compliance or ethical concern. When in doubt, seeking guidance from regulatory bodies or legal experts is paramount. The decision-making process should prioritize fairness, equity, and compliance, even if it means a less immediate or less cost-effective solution. Question 3. The efficiency study reveals that a particular cohort of applicant has significantly higher average MCAT scores and GPAs than previous years, potentially boosting Albany Medical College's national ranking metrics. The admissions committee is considering whether to adjust its selection criteria to prioritize admitting a higher proportion of these applicants, even if it means slightly de-emphasizing other holistic review components for this specific group. Option A. Strictly adhere to the established holistic review process evaluating all applicants based on the full range of criteria outlined in the college's admissions policy, regardless of potential impact on ranking metrics. Option B. Adjust the selection criteria to favor applicants with higher MCAT scores and GPAs, thereby increasing the average scores of admitted students and improving the college's ranking. Option C. Implement a tiered review system where applicants with scores above a certain threshold are fast-tracked for admission, with less emphasis on the qualitative aspects of their applications. Option D. Focus on admitting students who are likely to publish research during their medical school tenure, as this is a key metric for institutional prestige, even if it means overlooking other strong applicant attributes. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to the established holistic review process, evaluating all applicants based on the full range of criteria outlined in the college's admissions policy, regardless of potential impact on ranking metrics. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the pursuit of academic excellence and institutional reputation with the ethical imperative of fair and equitable admissions processes. The pressure to admit high-achieving students, while understandable, must not compromise the integrity of the application review. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all applicants are evaluated based on established criteria, without undue influence from external factors or a desire to manipulate rankings. The correct approach involves a thorough and unbiased review of all application components, adhering strictly to Albany Medical College's stated admissions policies and guidelines. This ensures that decisions are based on merit, diversity, and the holistic assessment of each candidate's potential to succeed in medical school and contribute to the profession. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with regulatory frameworks that emphasize fairness, transparency, and non-discrimination in educational admissions. It upholds the principle of equal opportunity and protects the institution from potential legal challenges and reputational damage. An approach that prioritizes admitting students based on their potential to improve specific institutional metrics, such as average GPA or MCAT scores, is ethically flawed. This constitutes a form of gaming the system and undermines the fundamental purpose of admissions, which is to select qualified individuals for education, not to artificially inflate statistical data. Such an approach violates principles of fairness and equity, potentially disadvantaging equally or more qualified candidates who do not fit the desired statistical profile. It also risks creating a skewed student body that may not reflect the diversity of the population the college aims to serve. Another incorrect approach is to selectively highlight or downplay certain aspects of an applicant's profile to fit a predetermined outcome. This lack of transparency and potential for bias can lead to unfair admissions decisions. It erodes trust in the admissions process and can have long-term negative consequences for both the institution and the applicants. This approach fails to uphold the ethical obligation to evaluate each applicant comprehensively and objectively. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to the established admissions rubric and a clear understanding of the ethical principles governing higher education. Admissions committees must be trained to recognize and resist pressures that could compromise their objectivity. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as institutional metrics versus individual applicant merit, the guiding principle should always be fairness, integrity, and adherence to established policies. A robust appeals process and regular review of admissions data for any signs of bias are also crucial components of maintaining an ethical and effective admissions system. Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that the current application review process at Albany Medical College is time-consuming and could be streamlined by automating certain initial screening steps. Which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of the admissions process while considering potential improvements? Option A. Immediately implement the proposed automated screening steps to expedite the review process and reduce operational costs. Option B. Implement the automated screening steps, but only for applicants from specific demographic groups to test their effectiveness. Option C. Form a special committee comprising admissions officers, faculty members, and student representatives to thoroughly evaluate the study's findings and propose modifications that align with existing admissions policies and ethical standards before any implementation. Option D. Disregard the study's findings, citing the importance of maintaining the traditional, in-depth review process that has been in place for many years. The correct answer is C. Form a special committee comprising admissions officers, faculty members, and student representatives to thoroughly evaluate the study's findings and propose modifications that align with existing admissions policies and ethical standards before any implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of institutional improvement with the ethical obligation to ensure that any changes do not negatively impact the integrity of the admissions process or create an unfair advantage for certain applicants. The Albany Medical College entrance exam, like all reputable academic institutions, operates under strict guidelines designed to ensure fairness, equity, and the selection of candidates based on merit and suitability for medical education. The challenge lies in identifying and implementing efficiencies without compromising these core principles, which are implicitly governed by the college's internal policies and broader educational accreditation standards. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the study's findings by a designated committee, including representatives from admissions, faculty, and potentially student affairs. This committee would assess the proposed changes for their alignment with Albany Medical College's mission, its admissions policies, and any relevant accreditation standards. The focus would be on identifying efficiencies that enhance the review process without introducing bias or compromising the holistic evaluation of applicants. This aligns with the ethical imperative to maintain a fair and transparent admissions process, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated on consistent and equitable criteria. Such a committee-driven, policy-aligned review is crucial for upholding the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring compliance with the implicit regulatory framework governing higher education admissions in the United States. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the efficiency recommendations without a comprehensive review. This could lead to unintended consequences, such as inadvertently favoring applicants with specific types of experiences or backgrounds that the new process might implicitly prioritize, thereby violating principles of equal opportunity and fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the study entirely without proper consideration. This would be a failure to engage in continuous improvement and could lead to missed opportunities to enhance the admissions process, potentially impacting the college's ability to attract and select the most qualified candidates. A third incorrect approach would be to implement changes that solely focus on speed or cost reduction, without adequately considering their impact on the quality and fairness of the applicant evaluation. This prioritizes operational metrics over the fundamental ethical and regulatory requirements of a fair admissions process. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the underlying goals of the proposed changes and then evaluating them against established institutional policies, ethical guidelines, and the overarching principles of fairness and equity in admissions. A structured review process, involving relevant stakeholders and a clear assessment of potential impacts, is essential for making informed decisions that uphold the integrity of the institution and its admission standards. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a growing interest in alternative pathways to medical school. To better understand the motivations and preferences of prospective applicants for the Albany Medical College entrance exam, which of the following approaches would be most ethically and regulatorily sound? Option A. Scraping and analyzing public social media profiles of individuals who have expressed interest in medicine to identify potential leadership qualities. Option B. Analyzing aggregated, anonymized data from past applicant pools and publicly available demographic trends in pre-medical education. Option C. Purchasing lists of individuals who have taken online pre-medical courses from third-party providers without verifying their data collection practices. Option D. Directly surveying prospective applicants about their personal financial situations and family medical history to gauge commitment. The correct answer is B. Analyzing aggregated, anonymized data from past applicant pools and publicly available demographic trends in pre-medical education. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need to gather information for strategic planning with the ethical obligation to protect the privacy and confidentiality of prospective applicants. The Albany Medical College entrance exam, like other academic institutions, operates under specific guidelines regarding data collection and usage, which are often informed by broader educational and privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any market research activities are conducted in a manner that is both effective for the college's goals and respectful of applicant rights. The correct approach involves designing market research that focuses on aggregated, anonymized data and publicly available information. This method respects applicant privacy by not collecting or analyzing personally identifiable information without explicit consent. It aligns with ethical principles of data stewardship and is likely compliant with any relevant privacy regulations governing educational institutions, which typically emphasize data minimization and purpose limitation. The goal is to understand general trends and preferences without intruding on individual applicant data. An incorrect approach that involves directly surveying prospective applicants about their personal motivations and future career plans without a clear, disclosed purpose and consent mechanism would be ethically problematic and potentially violate privacy guidelines. This approach risks overstepping boundaries and could be perceived as intrusive, potentially deterring applicants. Another incorrect approach, which involves analyzing publicly available social media profiles of prospective applicants to infer their suitability or interests, raises significant privacy concerns. While the information is public, using it for selection or profiling purposes without explicit consent or a clearly defined, justifiable rationale can be seen as an inappropriate use of personal data and may not align with the college's stated admissions policies or ethical standards. A further incorrect approach, such as purchasing lists of individuals who have expressed interest in medical careers from third-party vendors without verifying the source or consent practices of those vendors, is also professionally unsound. This method carries the risk of using data that was obtained unethically or illegally, and it bypasses the college's direct relationship with prospective applicants, undermining transparency and trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with clearly defining the research objectives. Subsequently, one must identify all potential data sources and rigorously assess their ethical and legal implications. Prioritizing methods that rely on aggregated, anonymized, or publicly available information, and always seeking informed consent when personal data is involved, are key tenets of responsible data handling in an academic admissions context. Transparency with prospective applicants about data usage is paramount. Question 6. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential discrepancy in an applicant's submitted undergraduate transcript, specifically regarding a grade reported on their application that differs from the official transcript on file. The admissions committee is reviewing this application for Albany Medical College. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the ethical and regulatory framework for medical school admissions? Option A. Flag the discrepancy for further review and request clarification from the applicant and the undergraduate institution to verify the accurate grade before proceeding with the application evaluation. Option B. Proceed with the application review, assuming the applicant's self-reported grade is accurate and the transcript may contain a clerical error without further investigation. Option C. Immediately disqualify the applicant based on the discrepancy, without allowing for any explanation or verification. Option D. Overlook the discrepancy if the applicant's overall academic record and other application components are exceptionally strong, prioritizing their perceived potential. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the application review, assuming the applicant's self-reported grade is accurate and the transcript may contain a clerical error without further investigation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity. The pressure to succeed, especially in a competitive environment like medical school admissions, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts or misrepresent their qualifications. The admissions committee must navigate this delicate balance, ensuring fairness to all applicants while upholding the rigorous standards of medical education. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine academic achievement and attempts to mislead. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all submitted application materials, including academic transcripts, standardized test scores, and any supplementary documentation. This process should be guided by Albany Medical College's established admissions policies and ethical guidelines, which prioritize honesty, accuracy, and merit. Specifically, the college's commitment to admitting students who demonstrate both academic preparedness and ethical character necessitates a diligent verification of all claims. Any discrepancies or red flags should trigger a deeper investigation, adhering to due process and fairness for the applicant. This approach ensures that admissions decisions are based on verifiable facts and align with the institution's values. Incorrect approaches analysis. Misinterpreting or overlooking discrepancies in academic records is an ethical failure because it compromises the integrity of the admissions process. It allows for potentially unqualified or dishonest applicants to gain an unfair advantage over more deserving candidates, violating principles of fairness and meritocracy. This approach fails to uphold the college's responsibility to select individuals who meet its high academic and ethical standards. Accepting an applicant's explanation for discrepancies without independent verification is also an ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a willingness to accept unsubstantiated claims, which can lead to admitting students who have misrepresented their qualifications. This undermines the credibility of the admissions committee and the institution, focusing solely on the applicant's perceived potential or future promise, while disregarding documented academic performance or inconsistencies is an ethical lapse. While potential is a factor, it cannot supersede the requirement for accurate and verifiable past performance. This approach risks admitting individuals who may not possess the foundational knowledge or ethical grounding necessary for medical training. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions should employ a systematic and evidence-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Clearly understanding and adhering to all institutional policies and ethical codes governing admissions. 2. Conducting a comprehensive and objective review of all application components. 3. Identifying and investigating any anomalies or inconsistencies with a commitment to fairness and due process. 4. Documenting all findings and decisions thoroughly. 5. Seeking guidance from senior colleagues or institutional ethics committees when faced with complex or ambiguous situations. This structured approach ensures that decisions are defensible, ethical, and aligned with the institution's mission. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that some applicants to the Albany Medical College entrance exam may be tempted to use unauthorized study aids or methods to gain an advantage. Considering the ethical standards expected of future medical professionals, which of the following represents the most responsible and appropriate course of action for an applicant facing this situation? Option A. Utilize study materials and online resources that are widely available and appear to cover the exam content, assuming they are permissible. Option B. Proceed with preparation using any materials deemed helpful without seeking explicit confirmation of their legitimacy to avoid delaying study efforts. Option C. Proactively consult the official Albany Medical College entrance exam guidelines or contact the admissions office to clarify acceptable study materials and preparation methods. Option D. Rely on advice from peers and online forums regarding the most effective, albeit potentially unofficial, study techniques. The correct answer is C. Proactively consult the official Albany Medical College entrance exam guidelines or contact the admissions office to clarify acceptable study materials and preparation methods. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a high-stakes entrance exam like the Albany Medical College entrance exam can lead individuals to consider shortcuts. However, the core of professional medical practice, and indeed any academic pursuit at this level, is built on honesty, integrity, and a commitment to fair evaluation. The challenge lies in navigating this pressure while adhering strictly to the established rules and ethical guidelines of the institution. The correct approach involves a student proactively seeking clarification and understanding of the exam's rules and expectations. This demonstrates a commitment to academic honesty and a willingness to engage with the process ethically. Specifically, consulting the official Albany Medical College entrance exam guidelines or contacting the admissions office directly for clarification on acceptable study materials and preparation methods is the most appropriate action. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principle of academic integrity, which is paramount in medical education. Furthermore, it adheres to the implicit contract between the applicant and the institution that the application process will be conducted with honesty and transparency. An incorrect approach would be to rely on unverified or potentially illicit study materials obtained from unofficial sources. This fails to uphold academic integrity by potentially using information that is not permitted or that confers an unfair advantage. It also risks violating specific exam regulations, which could lead to disqualification. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the possibility of rule violations and proceed with preparation without seeking any clarification. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the importance of adhering to established procedures, which is a critical failure in professional conduct. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that any study material is acceptable as long as it is publicly available. This overlooks the specific rules and guidelines set forth by Albany Medical College for its entrance exam, which may restrict certain types of preparation or resources. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing rules and ethical principles. When faced with ambiguity or pressure, the first step is always to seek official clarification. This involves identifying the relevant authority, e.g., admissions office, exam administrators, and consulting official documentation. If direct clarification is not immediately available, a cautious and ethical approach would be to err on the side of caution and avoid any actions that could be construed as a violation of academic integrity. This proactive and principled stance is essential for building a foundation of trust and ethical conduct, which is non-negotiable in the medical profession. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an admissions committee member has a close family member whose child is applying to Albany Medical College. The committee member is aware of a significant, ongoing medical condition affecting the family member. How should the admissions committee member proceed regarding the application? Option A. Proceed with the evaluation, but provide a personal opinion to the committee based on their knowledge of the family member's medical situation. Option B. Evaluate the applicant as usual, assuming their personal relationship will not influence their professional judgment. Option C. Discuss the applicant's situation and the family member's medical condition with other committee members to seek advice on how to proceed. Option D. Immediately recuse themselves from all aspects of the applicant's evaluation process and inform the admissions committee chair of the conflict of interest. Correct answer is D. Immediately recuse themselves from all aspects of the applicant's evaluation process and inform the admissions committee chair of the conflict of interest. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for timely and accurate information with the ethical obligation to protect patient privacy and maintain professional boundaries. The applicant's family member's medical condition is sensitive information, and the admissions committee member has a dual role, evaluating the applicant and maintaining confidentiality. The pressure to provide a favorable assessment, coupled with the personal connection, creates a conflict of interest that requires careful navigation to uphold ethical standards and institutional integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves the admissions committee member recusing themselves from any part of the evaluation process that directly involves the applicant. This upholds the principle of impartiality and avoids any perception of bias, whether actual or perceived. By stepping aside, the committee member ensures that the applicant is assessed solely on their merits and qualifications, as determined by an unbiased committee. This aligns with ethical guidelines for admissions processes, which emphasize fairness, objectivity, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. The committee member's duty is to the integrity of the admissions process and the institution, which supersedes their personal relationship with the applicant's family. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the evaluation without disclosing the relationship. This is a significant ethical failure as it violates the principle of transparency and creates a hidden conflict of interest. The admissions committee would be unaware of the potential for bias, and the applicant might receive an unfair advantage or disadvantage, undermining the fairness of the entire process. Another incorrect approach is to provide a personal recommendation or opinion to the admissions committee based on their knowledge of the family member's medical condition. This is ethically problematic because it introduces subjective, potentially irrelevant, and confidential information into the evaluation. The applicant's medical history, unless directly relevant to their ability to perform in medical school and disclosed by the applicant themselves, should not be a factor in admissions. Furthermore, it breaches the confidentiality expected in a professional capacity. A third incorrect approach is to discuss the applicant's situation with other committee members without formally recusing oneself. While seemingly an attempt to seek guidance, This still involves the committee member in the process and can lead to the disclosure of sensitive information or the subtle influence of their personal connection. It fails to create a clear separation and maintain the necessary objectivity. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions and evaluation roles must adhere to strict ethical codes that prioritize fairness, objectivity, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. When a personal relationship creates a potential conflict, the decision-making framework dictates immediate disclosure and recusal from any evaluative duties related to the individual in question. This ensures that decisions are made based on merit and established criteria, maintaining the integrity and credibility of the institution and its processes. The primary responsibility is to the institution and the fairness of the selection process, not to personal relationships. Question 9. Risk assessment procedures indicate a credible report of potential academic dishonesty during the standardized testing portion of the Albany Medical College entrance exam for a particular applicant. The report suggests the applicant may have accessed unauthorized materials. Which of the following represents the most appropriate immediate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Advise the applicant that their application is under review due to a potential violation and request they withdraw their application voluntarily. Option B. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged academic dishonesty, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond before making any determination. Option C. Immediately disqualify the applicant from further consideration based on the unsubstantiated report to maintain the integrity of the examination process. Option D. Disregard the report as it is merely an allegation and proceed with the applicant's evaluation based on their submitted credentials. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged academic dishonesty, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond before making any determination. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the institution's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. Pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for competitive programs like Albany Medical College, can lead some students to consider unethical shortcuts. The challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the admissions process while also ensuring that all applicants are treated fairly and that the college's reputation is protected. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation of the alleged misconduct. This aligns with Albany Medical College's commitment to academic integrity, as outlined in its admissions policies and general ethical guidelines for educational institutions. Such an investigation would typically involve gathering evidence, interviewing relevant parties, including the applicant and any witnesses, and reviewing the circumstances surrounding the alleged infraction. The outcome would then be determined based on established procedures and evidence, ensuring due process for the applicant while safeguarding the fairness of the admissions process. This approach upholds the principle of academic honesty, which is fundamental to the medical profession. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the applicant based solely on an unsubstantiated rumor or accusation. This fails to adhere to principles of due process and fairness, as it denies the applicant the opportunity to respond to the allegations or present their side of the story. It also risks making a wrongful judgment, which could have severe consequences for the applicant and damage the college's reputation for fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the allegations entirely, especially if there is credible information suggesting a potential breach of academic integrity. This would undermine the college's commitment to upholding ethical standards and could lead to admitting a candidate who has engaged in dishonest practices. This failure to investigate could also set a precedent that tolerates academic misconduct, thereby devaluing the qualifications of all admitted students. A third incorrect approach might involve confronting the applicant in an accusatory manner without a formal investigation or established protocol. This could lead to an unproductive and potentially confrontational interaction, and it bypasses the structured and objective process required for handling such sensitive matters. It also fails to gather sufficient evidence in a systematic way, making it difficult to reach a fair and defensible conclusion. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions and academic affairs must operate within a framework that prioritizes fairness, due process, and the integrity of the institution. When faced with allegations of misconduct, the decision-making process should involve 1. Acknowledging the allegation and its potential seriousness. 2. Initiating a formal, impartial investigation according to established institutional policies. 3. Gathering and evaluating evidence objectively. 4. Providing the accused party with an opportunity to respond. 5. Making a decision based on the evidence and institutional policies, ensuring transparency and fairness. This systematic approach protects both the applicant and the institution. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that an applicant to Albany Medical College has a GPA that falls below the typical matriculant average, but their application includes extensive documentation of significant personal and family health crises that demonstrably impacted their academic performance during specific semesters. The admissions committee is tasked with evaluating this applicant. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ethical and professional standards for medical school admissions? Option A. Postpone a decision indefinitely until the applicant can provide further evidence of academic recovery without setting a clear timeline or process for re-evaluation. Option B. Conduct a thorough, individualized review of the applicant's entire file, giving careful consideration to the documented extenuating circumstances in conjunction with their academic record and other qualifications to determine their overall potential for success in medical school. Option C. Offer the applicant a conditional acceptance with significantly reduced academic prerequisites for all coursework, regardless of their performance in other areas of the application. Option D. Automatically deny the application due to the GPA being below the established threshold, without further consideration of the supporting documentation for personal challenges. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough, individualized review of the applicant's entire file, giving careful consideration to the documented extenuating circumstances in conjunction with their academic record and other qualifications, to determine their overall potential for success in medical school. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in academic setting where a student's academic performance is significantly impacted by personal circumstances. The challenge lies in balancing the institution's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation with its responsibility to support students facing hardship. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure equitable treatment, and uphold the integrity of the admissions process while considering the holistic profile of the applicant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized review of the applicant's file, considering the extenuating circumstances alongside their academic record. This aligns with the principles of holistic review, which is standard practice in medical school admissions. It acknowledges that a single metric, like GPA, may not fully represent an applicant's potential. The ethical justification lies in fairness and equity. By considering the documented personal challenges, the committee is not penalizing the applicant for factors beyond their control, thereby promoting a more just evaluation. This approach also reflects the broader ethical imperative in healthcare to understand and address patient circumstances, a skill that begins with understanding applicant circumstances. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to automatically disqualify the applicant based solely on their GPA, without considering the documented extenuating circumstances. This fails to adhere to the principles of holistic review and can be seen as an unfair and rigid application of admissions criteria, potentially overlooking a candidate who, despite academic setbacks, possesses the resilience and other qualities necessary for medical school. This approach lacks empathy and fails to recognize the complexity of individual student journeys. Another incorrect approach is to grant the applicant special consideration that significantly lowers the admission standards for them compared to other applicants with similar academic profiles but no extenuating circumstances. While acknowledging hardship is important, it should not compromise the fundamental academic rigor required for medical education. This approach could undermine the integrity of the admissions process and raise concerns about fairness to other applicants. A third incorrect approach is to defer the decision indefinitely without a clear process for re-evaluation or a defined timeline. This leaves the applicant in limbo and does not demonstrate a commitment to a fair and timely admissions process. It can be perceived as a way to avoid making a difficult decision, which is not a professionally responsible course of action. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions should employ a framework that prioritizes fairness, equity, and a comprehensive understanding of the applicant. This involves 1. establishing clear yet flexible admissions criteria that allow for holistic review. 2. Developing standardized procedures for evaluating extenuating circumstances, ensuring consistency and minimizing bias. 3. Fostering a culture of empathy and understanding within the admissions committee. 4. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them thoroughly. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating admissions policies to reflect best practices and ethical considerations. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a prospective applicant for the Albany Medical College entrance exam has discovered an online forum where individuals claim to have access to past exam questions and study guides that are not officially released by the college. The applicant is under significant pressure to perform well. Which of the following represents the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for this applicant? Option A. Utilize the unofficial study materials and past questions from the online forum to prepare for the exam, as they may offer a competitive edge. Option B. Ignore the online forum and continue preparing using only officially recognized study materials without taking any further action. Option C. Discreetly share the information about the forum with a few trusted friends who are also applying, so they can also benefit from the resources. Option D. Report the existence of the online forum and its alleged content to the Albany Medical College admissions office and refrain from using any materials from it. The correct answer is A. Utilize the unofficial study materials and past questions from the online forum to prepare for the exam, as they may offer a competitive edge. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical imperative of academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a high-stakes entrance exam, like the Albany Medical College entrance exam, can lead to compromised decision-making. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical boundaries and ensure fair competition for all applicants. The correct approach involves a student independently preparing for the exam, utilizing legitimate study resources, and adhering strictly to the examination's rules and regulations. This upholds the principles of academic honesty and fairness, which are foundational to medical education and the profession. Specifically, it aligns with the Albany Medical College's commitment to admitting students based on their own merit and demonstrated knowledge, without any form of external, unauthorized assistance. This approach respects the integrity of the admissions process and ensures that all candidates are evaluated on an equal footing. An incorrect approach would be to seek or utilize unauthorized study materials that are not officially sanctioned by Albany Medical College for the entrance exam. This constitutes a violation of academic integrity and the examination's rules. Such actions undermine the fairness of the admissions process by providing an unfair advantage, thereby devaluing the efforts of honest applicants. Furthermore, engaging in such practices can lead to severe consequences, including disqualification from the admissions process and potential damage to one's academic record. Another incorrect approach would be to share exam content or strategies with other prospective applicants during the preparation phase, even if the intent is to help. This also violates academic integrity and the spirit of a standardized entrance examination, as it compromises the confidentiality and fairness of the assessment. It creates an uneven playing field and is a form of academic misconduct. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the institution's academic integrity policies and the specific rules governing the entrance examination. Applicants should prioritize ethical conduct, self-reliance in preparation, and adherence to all stated guidelines. When faced with a situation that seems to offer an easy advantage but raises ethical concerns, the professional decision-making framework dictates seeking clarification from the institution or abstaining from any action that could be construed as dishonest or unfair. The long-term implications for one's academic and professional career should always be considered. Question 12. The assessment process reveals an applicant to Albany Medical College who presents a deeply compelling personal narrative detailing significant financial hardship and extenuating circumstances that have impacted their academic trajectory. The admissions committee is moved by the applicant's story and their expressed determination to pursue a medical career despite these challenges. However, the applicant's standardized test scores and GPA fall below the typical range for admitted students. The committee must decide how to proceed with this application, balancing compassion with the established admission standards. Option A. Deny the application immediately due to the applicant's academic metrics not meeting the standard threshold, without a full review of their other application materials. Option B. Offer the applicant a conditional acceptance based primarily on their compelling personal narrative and demonstrated resilience, with the understanding that they will need to meet certain academic benchmarks during their first year. Option C. Create a special review pathway for this applicant, allowing for a less stringent evaluation of their academic qualifications due to their extenuating circumstances. Option D. Conduct a thorough, objective review of all application components, including academic records, standardized test scores, personal essays, and letters of recommendation, against Albany Medical College's published admissions criteria, while also considering if the applicant meets the threshold for any available institutional support programs. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough, objective review of all application components, including academic records, standardized test scores, personal essays, and letters of recommendation, against Albany Medical College's published admissions criteria, while also considering if the applicant meets the threshold for any available institutional support programs. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge common in academic admission, where an applicant's personal circumstances might evoke sympathy, but must be evaluated strictly against established institutional criteria. The tension lies between empathy for the applicant's situation and the imperative to maintain fairness and consistency in the admissions process for all candidates. The admissions committee must balance compassion with the need to uphold the integrity and fairness of the Albany Medical College's entrance examination and its associated regulatory framework. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the applicant's academic record, standardized test scores, and any other quantifiable metrics that align with Albany Medical College's stated admissions criteria. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework governing university admissions, which mandates fair and equitable evaluation based on predefined standards. The principle of equal opportunity requires that all applicants be assessed against the same benchmarks, irrespective of personal narratives, to ensure a merit-based selection process. Adherence to these established criteria prevents bias and upholds the credibility of the admissions process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to grant preferential treatment based solely on the applicant's compelling personal story and financial hardship. This fails to adhere to the regulatory requirement for objective, merit-based evaluation. It introduces subjective bias and undermines the principle of equal opportunity, potentially disadvantaging other equally or more qualified candidates who may not have presented such a narrative. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the applicant outright without a comprehensive review of their academic qualifications, simply because their personal circumstances are challenging. This is ethically problematic as it fails to consider the applicant's potential and may overlook strong candidates who have overcome adversity. It also deviates from the established protocol for evaluating all aspects of an application. A third incorrect approach is to propose a separate, less rigorous evaluation process specifically for this applicant due to their hardship. This violates the principle of uniformity in the admissions process and creates an unfair advantage, contradicting the regulatory mandate for consistent application of standards across all candidates. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Clearly understanding the institution's admissions criteria and the regulatory framework governing them. 2. Conducting a comprehensive and objective evaluation of all application components. 3. Recognizing and managing personal biases, ensuring that empathy does not override objective assessment. 4. Documenting the evaluation process and the rationale for the decision, ensuring transparency and accountability. In situations involving hardship, the focus should remain on whether the applicant meets the established academic and professional standards, and if any institutional support mechanisms, separate from admissions criteria, are available. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates that an applicant to the Albany Medical College entrance exam is aware of a specific, albeit minor, loophole in the exam's proctoring software that could allow for brief, undetectable access to external notes. The applicant is under significant pressure to achieve a high score. Which of the following represents the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the applicant? Option A. Ignore the loophole and proceed with the exam as if it were not discovered, hoping that their existing knowledge is sufficient without considering the ethical implications of the discovered vulnerability. Option B. Utilize the loophole to access external notes to ensure a higher score, rationalizing that it is a minor infraction and the software's deficiency is the institution's responsibility. Option C. Attempt to exploit the loophole to gain a slight advantage, believing that the risk of detection is minimal and that the pressure to succeed justifies the action. Option D. Immediately report the identified loophole to the Albany Medical College admissions office and refrain from using it, prioritizing academic integrity and the fairness of the examination process. The correct answer is B. Utilize the loophole to access external notes to ensure a higher score, rationalizing that it is a minor infraction and the software's deficiency is the institution's responsibility. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between a student's desire for academic success and the ethical imperative to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for competitive programs like Albany Medical College, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts. However, the regulatory framework governing medical education entrance exams, as dictated by Albany Medical College's specific guidelines, strictly prohibits any form of academic dishonesty. Upholding these standards is paramount to ensuring a fair and equitable admissions process and to maintaining the integrity of the medical profession. The correct approach involves a commitment to honest and independent work, recognizing that the admissions process is designed to assess genuine aptitude and preparation. This aligns with the core ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of future healthcare professionals. Specifically, adhering to the Albany Medical College's stated examination policies, which would undoubtedly prohibit the use of unauthorized aids or collaboration, is the only ethically and regulatorily sound path. This approach ensures that the applicant's performance accurately reflects their own knowledge and abilities, fostering a foundation of trust and ethical conduct from the outset of their medical education journey. An incorrect approach would be to engage in any form of academic dishonesty, such as using unauthorized study materials or seeking assistance from others during the exam. This directly violates the explicit rules and regulations set forth by Albany Medical College for its entrance examinations. Such actions undermine the fairness of the admissions process, disadvantage other applicants who adhere to the rules, and demonstrate a lack of the ethical character required for medical practice. Furthermore, engaging in such behavior could lead to disqualification from the admissions process and potential future repercussions within the academic or professional sphere. Another incorrect approach would be to misrepresent one's qualifications or experiences on the application, which is a form of dishonesty that also compromises the integrity of the admissions process and the applicant's suitability for medical school. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a thorough understanding of the examination's rules and regulations. Applicants must internalize the expectation of honesty and integrity. When faced with pressure or temptation, they should reflect on the long-term consequences of their actions and the foundational importance of ethical conduct in medicine. Seeking clarification on any ambiguous rules from the admissions office, rather than making assumptions or attempting to circumvent them, is a responsible step. Ultimately, the decision should prioritize adherence to established ethical and regulatory standards, even if it means a less favorable immediate outcome, as this builds a foundation for a trustworthy and ethical career. Question 14. Upon reviewing the Albany Medical College application portal, an applicant discovers a minor clerical error on an uploaded transcript that slightly inflates a GPA calculation for a single semester. The applicant is concerned this might negatively impact their overall application, as they believe their true academic performance is strong enough to be competitive. The applicant has the option to either submit the application as is, knowing about the error, or to attempt to have the transcript corrected before submission, which may cause a delay. Option A. Submit the application with the uploaded transcript, acknowledging the minor GPA inflation in a separate addendum to the admissions committee. Option B. Contact the admissions committee to inquire about the process for correcting uploaded documents, even if it means a potential delay in their review. Option C. Submit the application with the uploaded transcript as is, hoping the admissions committee does not notice the minor GPA inflation. Option D. Upload a revised transcript with the corrected GPA calculation without informing the admissions committee of the original error or the correction. Correct answer is A. Submit the application with the uploaded transcript, acknowledging the minor GPA inflation in a separate addendum to the admissions committee. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of an applicant during the admissions process for Albany Medical College. The core issue revolves around the accurate and truthful representation of one's academic record and experiences. Admissions committees rely on the honesty of applicants to make informed decisions about who is best suited for their rigorous programs. Misrepresenting information, even if seemingly minor, undermines this trust and can have serious consequences. The correct approach involves a commitment to complete transparency and honesty. This means acknowledging any academic shortcomings or areas where performance was not optimal, and providing context or explanations if appropriate, rather than attempting to conceal or alter the record. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of future healthcare professionals, and is implicitly required by the application process of any reputable institution like Albany Medical College, which expects applicants to adhere to its stated policies on application accuracy. An incorrect approach would be to deliberately omit or misrepresent information on the application. This constitutes a breach of trust and a violation of the application's terms and conditions, which typically require truthful and complete disclosure. Such an action demonstrates a lack of integrity, a trait that is antithetical to the practice of medicine. Furthermore, if discovered, it can lead to immediate disqualification from the admissions process and potentially prevent future applications to medical schools. Another incorrect approach would be to seek external assistance to alter official records, which is not only unethical but also potentially illegal. The professional decision-making process in such situations should begin with a thorough review of the application requirements and a commitment to absolute truthfulness. Applicants should carefully consider every question and provide accurate, complete answers. If there are any doubts about how to present information, it is best to err on the side of caution and provide full disclosure, perhaps with a brief, factual explanation. Seeking clarification from the admissions office is also a responsible step if ambiguity exists. The guiding principle should always be to uphold personal integrity and adhere to the established rules and ethical standards of the institution. Question 15. Quality control measures reveal a pattern of inconsistent performance on formative assessments for a second-year medical student, raising concerns about their readiness for clinical rotations despite a strong performance in preclinical coursework. The student's faculty advisor, aware of personal challenges the student has been experiencing, has expressed a desire to advocate for leniency. The Dean of Students is tasked with determining the appropriate next steps. Option A. Overlook the quality control flags, assuming the student's preclinical success indicates they will eventually adapt to clinical demands, and inform the faculty advisor that no action is required. Option B. Initiate a formal academic review process, including a meeting with the student to discuss the performance data and any extenuating circumstances they wish to present, while consulting relevant college policies on academic progression and student support services. Option C. Immediately place the student on academic probation based on the quality control flags, informing the faculty advisor that no further discussion is necessary given the clear performance indicators. Option D. Share the student's performance concerns with other students in the same cohort to gauge their observations and gather informal feedback on the student's behavior. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal academic review process, including a meeting with the student to discuss the performance data and any extenuating circumstances they wish to present, while consulting relevant college policies on academic progression and student support services. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's academic performance and their potential future contribution to the medical field, juxtaposed against the institution's responsibility to uphold academic integrity and ethical standards. The pressure to maintain high standards while also considering individual circumstances requires careful judgment. The correct approach involves a thorough, unbiased review of the student's academic record and any supporting documentation, followed by a confidential discussion with the student to understand their perspective and any mitigating factors. This aligns with Albany Medical College's commitment to fairness and due process, as outlined in its academic integrity policies and student conduct guidelines. These policies typically emphasize that decisions regarding academic standing should be based on objective criteria and that students have a right to be heard. Furthermore, ethical principles in medical education, such as those promoted by the Association of American Medical Colleges, (AMC), stress the importance of integrity, honesty, and fairness in evaluating students. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student based solely on the initial quality control flags without further investigation. This fails to uphold the principle of due process and could lead to an unfair outcome, violating the college's stated policies and ethical obligations to provide a fair evaluation. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the quality control flags entirely due to the student's perceived potential or pressure from external sources. This would compromise academic integrity and set a dangerous precedent, undermining the credibility of the college's evaluation system and potentially admitting a student who may not meet the required standards for medical practice. A third incorrect approach would be to share the student's academic performance issues with other students or faculty outside of the official review process. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality, violating student privacy rights and the college's policies on information handling, and is ethically unsound. Professionals should approach such situations by first adhering to established institutional policies and procedures for academic review. This typically involves a multi-step process that includes objective data gathering, impartial evaluation, and an opportunity for the student to respond. Ethical considerations, such as fairness, honesty, and respect for individual rights, must guide every step of the decision-making process. Maintaining confidentiality and avoiding personal bias are paramount. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that a prospective student's GPA and MCAT scores fall below the median for admitted students, yet the admissions committee member feels strongly that the student possesses exceptional leadership qualities and a profound commitment to service, which they believe indicates significant potential for success in medicine. This committee member advocates for admitting the student despite the lower quantitative metrics. Option A. Advocate for a holistic review of the student's application, ensuring all qualitative aspects like leadership and service are thoroughly considered alongside quantitative metrics, and if the qualitative strengths demonstrably compensate for the lower scores according to established college guidelines, then recommend admission. Option B. Override the quantitative metrics based on the subjective assessment of the student's potential and personal qualities, recommending admission to acknowledge their perceived exceptionalism. Option C. Propose a conditional admission for the student, requiring them to complete specific remedial coursework before matriculation, without a full review of the qualitative aspects of their application. Option D. Reject the student's application immediately due to their failure to meet the minimum quantitative thresholds, as per the established evaluation methodology. The correct answer is A. Advocate for a holistic review of the student's application, ensuring all qualitative aspects like leadership and service are thoroughly considered alongside quantitative metrics, and if the qualitative strengths demonstrably compensate for the lower scores according to established college guidelines, then recommend admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived academic performance and the objective, standardized evaluation criteria established by Albany Medical College. The pressure to admit promising students, coupled with the potential for subjective interpretation of a student's potential versus their demonstrated academic record, creates a complex ethical landscape. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the admissions process while remaining compassionate. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the student's entire application, including their academic record, standardized test scores, personal essays, and letters of recommendation, against the established admissions criteria. This approach prioritizes fairness and adherence to the college's stated policies, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated consistently. Ethically, this aligns with principles of justice and impartiality, treating all applicants equitably. Regulatory frameworks for medical school admissions, such as those overseen by the Liaison Committee on Medical Education, LCME, in the U.S., emphasize the importance of objective and transparent admissions processes that select students based on merit and preparedness for medical study. Deviating from these established criteria without a clear, documented, and justifiable rationale risks undermining the credibility of the admissions committee and the institution. An incorrect approach would be to override the objective academic data based solely on a subjective feeling of the student's potential or a desire to admit them due to perceived extenuating circumstances not fully supported by the application. This fails to adhere to the established evaluation methodology and could be seen as preferential treatment, violating principles of fairness and equity. Ethically, it introduces bias and undermines the integrity of the admissions process. Regulatory failure would occur if this subjective decision leads to the admission of a student who demonstrably lacks the foundational academic preparedness required for medical school, potentially impacting their future success and the quality of future medical practitioners. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's application outright without a comprehensive review, solely based on a single metric that falls below the typical threshold, without considering the holistic nature of the application. This fails to acknowledge the possibility that other strengths in the application might compensate for a weaker area, as often considered in holistic review processes. Ethically, this can be seen as a lack of due diligence and potentially unfair to the applicant. Regulatory failure could arise if the admissions process is not designed to consider a range of applicant strengths, as is often encouraged by accreditation bodies to promote diversity and identify promising candidates from varied backgrounds. A third incorrect approach would be to engage in lengthy discussions about the student's personal life or perceived hardships without a clear connection to how these factors might have impacted their academic performance and how that impact is reflected in the application. While empathy is important, the admissions process must remain focused on evaluating the applicant's preparedness for medical school based on the provided documentation and established criteria. Ethically, this can lead to an inappropriate focus on personal details rather than academic merit and preparedness, potentially creating privacy concerns and diverting from the core purpose of the evaluation. Regulatory failure would occur if the admissions committee becomes overly influenced by non-academic factors, moving away from the objective assessment of qualifications necessary for medical education. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to the established evaluation rubric, a thorough and objective review of all application components, and a collaborative discussion among committee members to ensure consensus based on evidence. When faced with borderline cases, the focus should remain on whether the applicant meets the minimum established standards and whether their strengths demonstrably compensate for any weaknesses, all within the framework of the college's stated admissions policies and ethical guidelines. Question 17. Examination of the data shows that an admissions committee member for Albany Medical College has recently learned, through a personal connection unrelated to the application process, that one of the applicants has a significant, undisclosed personal hardship that, if known to the committee, might influence their decision. The committee member is aware of the applicant's strong academic record and has no personal bias for or against the applicant. What is the most ethically appropriate course of action for the admissions committee member? Option A. Share the information with the admissions committee chair, emphasizing its potential impact on the applicant's evaluation. Option B. Discreetly inform the applicant about the potential impact of the undisclosed hardship and suggest they address it in a supplementary statement. Option C. Proceed with the evaluation of the applicant's file as presented, assuming the undisclosed information would not have significantly altered their perception. Option D. Maintain strict confidentiality of the information and recuse themselves from any discussion or vote regarding this applicant's admission. The correct answer is B. Discreetly inform the applicant about the potential impact of the undisclosed hardship and suggest they address it in a supplementary statement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's academic aspirations and the ethical obligations of an admissions committee member. The committee member possesses information that, if revealed, could significantly impact the applicant's chances, but also carries a duty of confidentiality and fairness to all applicants. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing the principle of fairness to all applicants with the potential for a perceived advantage or disadvantage to a specific applicant based on privileged information. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves maintaining strict confidentiality and recusing oneself from any decision-making process concerning the applicant in question. This upholds the principle of impartiality and prevents any appearance of impropriety or undue influence. By stepping aside, the committee member ensures that the applicant is evaluated solely on the merits of their application as presented to the committee, without any external or privileged information affecting the outcome. This aligns with ethical guidelines for admissions committees, which emphasize fairness, objectivity, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. An incorrect approach would be to subtly hint to the applicant about the potential issues, thereby giving them an unfair advantage or opportunity to address something not formally part of the application review. This violates the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and introduces bias into the process. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the information and proceed with the evaluation as if it were not known. While seemingly neutral, this fails to acknowledge a potential conflict of interest and could lead to subconscious bias, even if unintentional. Furthermore, failing to disclose the conflict and recuse oneself is a direct breach of ethical conduct and institutional policy regarding conflicts of interest. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and institutional integrity. This involves 1. Identifying the ethical conflict. Recognize the potential for bias or unfairness. 2. Consulting relevant policies and guidelines. Review institutional policies on conflicts of interest, confidentiality, and admissions procedures. 3. Seeking guidance. If unsure, consult with a supervisor, ethics committee, or legal counsel. 4. Acting impartially. Take steps to eliminate or mitigate the conflict, such as recusal. 5. Documenting the decision. Keep a record of the steps taken and the rationale behind them. Question 18. Assessment of how a first-year medical student at Albany Medical College, who expresses strong personal religious objections to participating in discussions or clinical scenarios involving certain patient populations, should be guided by faculty when these objections conflict with the curriculum's requirement for exposure to diverse patient experiences. Option A. The student should be permitted to opt out of specific clinical rotations or patient interactions that conflict with their religious beliefs, provided they complete alternative assignments. Option B. The student should be counseled on the professional and ethical obligations of all healthcare providers to treat all patients equitably, regardless of personal beliefs, and be guided on how to manage personal beliefs within professional boundaries without compromising patient care or educational requirements. Option C. The student should be allowed to express their personal religious beliefs to patients during clinical encounters to foster transparency and understanding. Option D. The student's concerns should be dismissed as irrelevant to their medical education, and they should be instructed to comply with all curriculum requirements without further discussion. The correct answer is B. The student should be counseled on the professional and ethical obligations of all healthcare providers to treat all patients equitably, regardless of personal beliefs, and be guided on how to manage personal beliefs within professional boundaries without compromising patient care or educational requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's personal beliefs and the ethical obligations of a future healthcare professional. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing respect for individual autonomy and conscience with the imperative to provide unbiased and equitable care, as mandated by the principles of medical ethics and professional conduct expected of Albany Medical College students. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising patient well-being or the integrity of the medical profession. The correct approach involves a commitment to upholding the principles of non-discrimination and patient-centered care. This means acknowledging the student's personal beliefs while firmly establishing that these beliefs cannot impede their ability to learn and practice medicine in a manner that respects all patients. The student must be guided to understand that their personal views, while protected in their private life, do not supersede their professional responsibilities once they enter a clinical setting or engage in medical education that involves patient interaction. This aligns with the ethical framework of medical education, which emphasizes the development of compassionate, competent, and unbiased practitioners. Specifically, the ethical guidelines for medical students at institutions like Albany Medical College typically stress the importance of treating all patients with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or personal characteristics, and ensuring that personal beliefs do not interfere with the delivery of care or the learning process. An incorrect approach that involves allowing the student to opt out of specific clinical rotations based on personal beliefs would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the comprehensive nature of medical training, which requires exposure to a diverse patient population to develop well-rounded clinical skills and an understanding of various health conditions and patient needs. Such an opt-out would also violate the principle of equitable treatment for all patients, as it could lead to situations where certain patient groups receive less attention or training from future physicians. Furthermore, it undermines the institution's responsibility to produce graduates who are prepared to serve the entire community. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's concerns outright without further discussion or guidance, is also professionally unacceptable. While the student's beliefs may not be permissible in a clinical context, a complete dismissal can be perceived as unsupportive and may alienate the student, hindering their willingness to engage with the curriculum and address the underlying issues. This approach fails to recognize the educational opportunity to guide the student toward understanding professional ethical boundaries and developing appropriate coping mechanisms for managing personal beliefs in a professional setting. A third incorrect approach, which is to allow the student to express their personal beliefs to patients during clinical encounters, is a severe ethical and professional failure. This directly violates patient confidentiality and the principle of maintaining professional boundaries. Patients have a right to receive medical care free from the imposition of a healthcare provider's personal moral or religious views. Such an action would erode patient trust, potentially cause distress to patients, and violate the core tenets of ethical medical practice and the educational standards of Albany Medical College. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, actively listen to and acknowledge the student's concerns to foster an open dialogue. Second, clearly articulate the professional and ethical obligations of a medical student and future physician, referencing institutional policies and established ethical codes. Third, explore potential accommodations that do not compromise patient care or educational integrity, such as supervised discussions about managing personal beliefs in a professional context or ensuring that the student receives comprehensive training across all required areas. Fourth, if personal beliefs fundamentally conflict with essential professional duties, the institution must uphold its commitment to patient welfare and the integrity of the profession, which may involve further counseling or, in extreme cases, disciplinary action. Question 19. Which approach would be most ethically sound for an Albany Medical College admissions committee member who has a close personal relationship with the parent of an applicant and has inadvertently learned sensitive, non-public information about the applicant's recent personal struggles that might influence their application? Option A. Advocate for the applicant during the committee discussion, subtly highlighting the applicant's resilience in overcoming personal challenges without revealing the specific nature of the struggles. Option B. Proceed with the evaluation as usual, assuming the personal information will not influence their objective assessment of the applicant's qualifications. Option C. Recuse oneself from any discussion or vote concerning the applicant's admission and inform the admissions committee chair of the potential conflict of interest. Option D. Share the personal information with other committee members to provide a more comprehensive understanding of the applicant's situation, believing it will foster empathy. Correct answer is C. Recuse oneself from any discussion or vote concerning the applicant's admission and inform the admissions committee chair of the potential conflict of interest. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's academic aspirations and the ethical obligations of an admissions committee member. The committee member possesses information that, if revealed, could unfairly advantage one applicant over others and compromise the integrity of the admissions process. Maintaining confidentiality and ensuring a fair and equitable evaluation are paramount. The correct approach involves recusing oneself from the decision-making process for the applicant in question. This upholds the principle of impartiality and avoids any appearance of impropriety or conflict of interest. The Albany Medical College entrance exam, like all professional admissions processes, operates under strict ethical guidelines that mandate fairness, objectivity, and the protection of applicant privacy. By stepping aside, the committee member adheres to these principles, ensuring that the evaluation is based solely on the merits of the application and the established criteria, free from personal bias or privileged information. This aligns with the ethical standards expected of all individuals involved in the admissions process, safeguarding the reputation and fairness of the institution. An incorrect approach would be to advocate for the applicant based on the personal knowledge gained outside the formal application review. This action directly violates the principle of fairness and introduces an unfair advantage, undermining the competitive nature of the admissions process. It also breaches confidentiality, as the information was obtained in a context separate from the official review. Another incorrect approach would be to subtly steer the discussion toward the applicant's strengths without disclosing the specific information, while still remaining involved in the decision. This is disingenuous and still represents a conflict of interest, as the committee members' participation is tainted by their privileged knowledge. Finally, ignoring the situation and proceeding with the review as if no personal connection existed would be a failure to recognize and address a clear ethical conflict, thereby compromising the integrity of the process. The professional decision-making process in such situations requires a proactive recognition of potential conflicts of interest. Professionals must prioritize ethical conduct and institutional integrity over personal relationships or perceived obligations to an individual. When a conflict arises, the immediate and most ethical action is to disclose the conflict and recuse oneself from any decision-making capacity related to the matter. This ensures that decisions are made impartially and based on objective criteria, thereby maintaining trust and fairness within the professional environment. Question 20. Implementation of the Albany Medical College entrance exam is compromised when a proctor observes a student discreetly looking at notes hidden beneath their exam booklet. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the proctor to take? Option A. Make a mental note of the observation, but take no immediate action, deciding to address it after the exam concludes. Option B. Ignore the behavior to avoid disrupting the exam environment and potentially causing a scene. Option C. Discreetly signal to the student to stop looking at the notes, assuming they will comply and no further action is needed. Option D. Immediately stop the student's exam, confiscate the notes, and report the incident to the appropriate examination authority according to protocol. The correct answer is D. Immediately stop the student's exam, confiscate the notes, and report the incident to the appropriate examination authority according to protocol. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the institution's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for competitive programs like Albany Medical College, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of honesty and fairness, while navigating a situation where a student might be tempted to exploit a perceived loophole or engage in dishonest behavior. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the integrity of the admissions process is maintained and that all applicants are evaluated on their own merits. The correct approach involves a direct and ethical response that prioritizes academic integrity and institutional policy. This approach requires the proctor to immediately address the observed behavior by stopping the student and reporting the incident according to established protocols. This aligns with the fundamental ethical obligations of an exam proctor to ensure a fair and secure testing environment. Specifically, it upholds the principles of honesty and fairness, which are cornerstones of academic and professional conduct. The regulatory framework for such exams, as implicitly understood within the context of a reputable medical college entrance exam, mandates adherence to rules and the prevention of cheating. Reporting the incident ensures that the college can investigate and take appropriate action, thereby safeguarding the validity of the admissions process and upholding the standards expected of future medical professionals. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the observed behavior is ethically and regulatorily unacceptable. This failure to act directly undermines the integrity of the examination process. It implicitly condones cheating, creating an unfair advantage for the student and disadvantaging honest applicants. Such an action violates the proctor's duty to maintain a secure testing environment and can lead to the admission of unqualified or dishonest individuals, which has serious implications for the medical profession. Another incorrect approach, such as subtly warning the student without formal reporting, is also professionally flawed. While it might seem like a less confrontational method, it still fails to address the root issue of academic dishonesty in a manner that is consistent with institutional policy and ethical standards. This approach does not guarantee that the student will cease the behavior or that the incident will be properly documented and investigated. It leaves the door open for future transgressions and does not fulfill the proctor's responsibility to uphold the rules of the examination. A professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a clear understanding of the exam's rules and regulations, as well as the institution's code of conduct. When an ethical dilemma arises, the professional should first identify the core ethical principles at stake, e.g., honesty, fairness, integrity. Next, they should consider the potential consequences of each possible action. The most appropriate course of action is typically the one that best upholds ethical principles and adheres to established rules and policies, even if it involves difficult conversations or actions. In this case, direct reporting is the most responsible and ethically sound path.